I've seen the footage. I'm not in Butler, but I've seen the footage. It seems that there's about between, I don't know, half a dozen and 8 shots fired. It's the unmistakable crack of gunfire. The audience screams, and Donald Trump seems to touch the back of his head or the back of his neck. Now, it must be said that within a split second, he was surrounded by Secret Service agents, and Donald Trump, after the gunfire had stopped, appeared to raise his fist. Now, whether that was a signal that he was okay, he did look out, and it seems from the audio, and as I say, I can't confirm this, I've only seen it once on the footage, but he seems to say something that's intelligible. So I'm okay, or we're good, or something like that.
There's
but
certainly an expression of defiance. I mean, I like you
There
haven't
is.
heard the audio, but I can now see the footage because it's playing endlessly on the news channels. And yes, there's a couple of expressions of defiance there, certainly.
Well, we certainly can't comment on his health or whether or not he's been hit or injured. He was obviously whisked off stage extremely quickly. And at any of these events, I've been to 20, 25 Trump rallies. We're not there today because we're in Milwaukee ahead of next week. But the security is very tight. You've got to get in very early. People queue up from sort of 7, 8 o'clock in the morning to hear him speak at 5, 7 o'clock at night. And that's because the security is so heavy. If someone has managed to get a firearm into a rally, that's a remarkable breach of security. But he's surrounded by a good number of Secret Service agents, of private security contractors. So how this has happened is it's quite incredible. But as I say, we can't comment definitively on his health, but there was certainly, as you said, a sort of stand of defiance by Trump after the gunshots were stopped.
An event like this is going to make people feel more staunchly what they already feel and more angrily what they already feel.
Take a look at what happened. Well, so we've come out to Brady Street. It's the main drag in the evening where people come in Milwaukee just to have a drink in one of the many pubs up and down this street. A lot of people, as you might expect, they knew exactly what had happened a couple of hours ago. And I'm interested in what they think about maybe the meaning of what happened. This country was already divided. We know that. There were worries about violence and political violence. We know that. And the political impacts of an assassination attempt against Donald Trump. Would it move the dial? And if it does, how? Anyway, I want to put some of these questions to people here. Let's see what people say.
We were at the Milwaukee Brewer game, the baseball game, and everyone around was seeing these text messages come up, and we saw it, and we were first surprised that it wasn't stopped and everything, and everyone was surprised. And then we started talking how this is going to be a big decision for the upcoming election due to just the uncertainty in the nation.
I mean, we've only seen the headline,
Sure.
but yes, that it's a wild thing that would be happening in 2024.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I know enough about the situation beyond the headline.
Well, even without knowing what happened, because we're still finding out what happened here. There was a shooter who's now dead, but it makes people worry about political violence, I guess, because there has been a big worry about that. What do you think?
I mean, I think we're more divided than ever.
And you would hope that we're past political violence. The division is rough to see.
It's worrisome to
It's
see
worrisome,
that amount of division.
right? This is America. We all love each other.
Well,
That's how it should be.
I don't know if
It's a
people do.
potpourri. It's a mixing. It's a melting pot, right?
Yeah. What does it make you think? Does it make you worried? Does it make you fearful? What do you think? Tell me.
Me personally, I'm not very worried. I know that security is going to be very tight for the RNC.
They usually plan these things out where there's a exit route. This would be a very serious security breach by the Secret Service. That this would even be someone must have snuck a gun in through those security magnetometers. But I think we're all looking at what is happening and assessing. If he got up, then that's a good sign. But it's all too early.
He got up. He's still gesturing at the crowd as he's put into that limo and driven away. Obviously, we're going to move into bringing you this as breaking news now throughout the evening because it's a very significant event. Assuming that his health is okay, Daniel, obviously he's going to be shaken up after an event like that. But assuming that his health is okay and he recovers from this, what do you think it means that at a rally like this, something like that can happen? What kind of security is there in place to stop it happening?
So there's, I don't know how many exact agents, but there's usually a dozen plus agents who are protecting him. And since he's a former president, he has less security than a sitting president, much less. But there is a security shield around him, but Biden has much more security, and then I think he is going to, this is going to set the news agenda for the next few days as we find out who who tried to shoot him, and how they got in and what their motivation was.
And I mean, is it too simple to say that at a Trump crowd, at a Trump rally, you're likely to have more guns than you are at a Democrat one?
I think that's incorrect, because at a Trump rally, they put people through these magnetometers. So basically, it's like going through the airport, and they confiscate guns if you even brought one. But most people who go to Trump rallies are strong Trump supporters, and so they are not trying to hurt the president. But we have seen a kind of a spate of political violence in this country in the last few years. The gubernatorial candidate in New York was rushed on the stage. Someone tried to stab him. Steve Scalise, a top House leader a few years ago, 10 years ago, was shot at a baseball field by a Bernie Sanders supporter. And so we have a toxic political culture in this country, unfortunately.
Do you think that the political implication on the discussion around gun laws might be altered by an incident such as this? Because, as you say, I mean, we've seen things like this before, but so close to the election and on such a divisive, popular and unpopular figure, it hasn't happened for a while.
They always have these discussions tend to kick up every time we have something like this, but Republicans are usually against tightening up gun laws, and so Trump signed a gun protection act, or a gun control law into law a few years ago when he was president. But there's just very little appetite in the Republican base for addressing this, and so I don't know if this is going to change that.
Tell me a little bit about Pennsylvania, where he is and where he was talking. As a state, is it one of those that's a swing state? Is it one that he needs to win around?
This is a critical state to him winning back the White House. It has Philadelphia with lots of universities, with the University of Pennsylvania. It has Carnegie Mellon, a top research university, Penn State, but it also has lots of rural areas and lots of areas of the state that have been affected by industrial jobs leaving. And so it went for Trump in 2016, then switched to Biden in 2020. And so it's one of those critical states. There's a top Senate race going on there as well, which could shift control of the U.S. Senate from Democrats to Republicans if the Republican wins in November. And so it's a classic bellwether state, and has lots of different types of people who live there.
And if you've just joined us, we're just reacting to the news that President Trump appears to have been shot at a rally. He has been taken away, and he appears to be gesturing at the crowd, and he is walking, but he's being carried away.
So there's the planning stage that I'll talk about in advance of this event and what the Secret Service typically does, and then there's the reaction element that we see, which most people around the world have now seen. The planning stage is the important part, where you mitigate all of these threats, whether it's through moving certain stages in a different direction out of line of sight, or you assign police officers and other Secret Service agents to mitigate those threats. And one of those things is potential high ground threats coming from buildings, which is what we saw here in this situation, where you had a building that gave an elevated platform to the shooter with a line of sight to the stage. That will be the primary focus of the investigation, aside from the shooter and the shooter's background. But that's where the FBI will look to see how exactly was this allowed to happen. As far as the reaction from the agents, as you described, correctly jumping on top of the president, hiding him behind the armor, behind that pipe and drape, the sharpshooters mitigating the threat, and then letting the detail know when it was safe to move the former president to the car, that the threat was eliminated. So that worked very well. I'm happy with that. What I'm still very concerned about is how a 20-year-old could formulate a plan and make his way to an elevated building uninterrupted and carry out this attack.
What I want to ask you, we spoke to a reporter who was there at the rally, and he talked about 20 to 30,000 people. Each one had to go through a metal detector to get inside. It was clearly very strict security to be inside that rally.
Right.
But outside, there wasn't. We've heard that from the witnesses. Would you expect there to be security almost patrolling the perimeter to make sure something like this couldn't happen?
And there's 3 rings of security that are set up. You've got an inner perimeter, which is the Secret Service agents that you saw react to the shooting. Then there's the middle perimeter, which includes screening for weapons at the rally site. And then there's the outer perimeter that goes well beyond just the site. This building where the shooter was on top of was fairly close, and it was outside what I will call the secure or clean area where people were being searched for weapons and other hazardous items. So that's really where visual observation becomes very important, both from the counter snipers that are on at an elevated position right above the former president. You could see those very clearly where they were on TV, as well as law enforcement officers and other agents. They should have been paying attention to that elevated threat. And for some reason, this 20-year-old was able to go unimpeded up a ladder to a building and lay flat and carry out this attack. There was obviously a lot of pre-planning that went into this. This individual knew what they wanted to do, what they wanted to carry out, and now the investigation will continue. And I can tell you, Chloe, the FBI investigation won't be the only one. You're already hearing members of Congress saying they're going to call the Secret Service director to the Hill to come testify. I'm sure the Department of Homeland Security, which the Secret Service is a part of, they will conduct their own investigation. So it's going to be a long road for the Secret Service.
Looking at the very particulars, knowing very little about this assassin, he was wearing a T-shirt that read "Demolition Ranch." That is a gun fetish site on YouTube. He was wearing the T-shirt that said "What the hell." He fits the classic profile now of what is a mass school shooter. He's in his early to mid-20s. He has no relationship with a woman. He's a kind of dropout, and he is focused on violence on the internet and with guns. And particularly now, America's awash in guns. And we have had a plague of school shooters and mass shootings ever since the automatic weapons ban that was enacted under President Clinton has been repealed under the Republicans and successive Supreme Court decisions, Heller and Bruin, that have essentially outlawed gun control throughout the country. So you have availability of these deadly weapons to deeply disturbed, unmoored young males, especially. And I don't think you need to look for political motives here. You're dealing with a deeper cultural malady, and the gun question is ultimately very much a larger political question and question of law.
I apologize for raising this, but it has to be said, as we know with the assassination of JFK, once again, after this event in Philadelphia, there is a lot of conspiracy theory circulating. And of course, it's easy for it to circulate now with social media. Do you see anything suspicious other than the obvious about the circumstances of what we know of what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania?
I think there are 2 points to make. One is the one I made. There are considerable studies done by experts on domestic terrorism, particularly a man named Robert Pape, P-A-P-E, at the University of Chicago, about mass shooters, school shooters, and so on. And this person evidently fits that profile. It's not political. Two, there are a lot of conspiracy theories that will be circulated of all kinds, and this gives rise to them. On the Republican side, there's been a coordinated and immediate effort to project the blame onto Democrats for saying that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and somehow that's the cause or the incitement to violence. Of course, that's an attempt to stop the criticism of Donald Trump and also to remove the focus for the fact that Donald Trump has been the single greatest cause of incitement to violence since his entry into the national political race. And I utterly condemn all the violence, but it is worth remembering as a historic fact that he essentially called for the assassination of his rival Hillary Clinton in 2016, saying if she were to appoint federal judges, that might be an issue of concern to that so-called Second Amendment people should pay attention to. He was denounced for inciting an attempted assassination, and he has incited violence against everybody involved in the cases against him, all of whom are under security protection right now and have received murder threats. So this is a great atmosphere of violence right now, and it floats with Donald Trump, who now is become almost a victim of in my view, a classic domestic terrorist without greater motive.